Hello there, RPG lovers, and welcome to another video. Overlord games have been around ever since 2007. To be honest with you, I never thought I'm going to enjoy these games just by looking at some of the gameplay footage. I'm not a huge fan of minion builds in RPGs, and these games look like they're built on that premise. But I finally decided to try them out a couple of months ago, and I'm really glad I did.
Proper evil takes skill and maybe, well, just a bit of mayhem. I think the Sleeping Beauty's a little rusty.
I played every Overlord game that I could find, which will include 6 games in total. There are only 2 games in the mainline series, and all other games are basically spin-off titles. These games are very unique and interesting, even though the series has a lot of ups and downs. Today, we're going to revisit all of these games in one single video, where I talk about my experience after I got to play all of them.
Beautiful, beautiful. I could watch that all day.
So sit back, grab a drink, and let me tell you about my experience with Overlord games. But before we start with the video, I want to give a huge shout out to my channel actually, because I'm getting really close to 100k subscribers, and it will mean a lot to me if you subscribe right now if you haven't already.
Master, evilness truly suits you. Let us go forth. There are nefarious deeds to be done. I feel the land quaking with fear already.
The first Overlord game came out in 2007 for PC, Xbox 360, and a year later for PlayStation 3. I played the PC version with my Xbox controller. If you're going to play this game on Steam, you'll need to install the base game and the expansion called Raising Hell. Then you only need to use the Raising Hell version if you want to get the full experience, but the base game still need to be installed. Yeah, it's a bit confusing, but as long as you install both of them, you'll be fine. You can always get it on GOG, as well as the second game, and I'll have my affiliate links down below. I didn't have any technical difficulties with this game, and I could run it in high resolutions, which is always a big relief when it comes to such old games. Speaking of visuals, I think the game still holds up really well today, mostly because of the artistic style. It reminds me of Fable for more than a couple of reasons. The color palette is vibrant and it has similar cartoony art style, similar humor, and even some gameplay features are quite similar. This game has a decent visual variety as well. All maps in the game have a distinctive look and feel, which makes the atmosphere great in general. Our guy looks like a Walmart version of Sauron / Lich King. I think he's pretty cool, and his appearance can change depending on the choices you make in the game. Again, very similar to Fable.
I'll leave it at that for now.
As for some other character models, they are nothing special, but they have a distinctive look. Those will be the 7 heroes which you as the Overlord have to defeat. Overall, I think the game is really pretty to look at, and it's easy to forget that you're playing a very old game. It's highly stylized and it's comparable to Fable, like I said before, or even Kingdoms of Amalur if you want to use a slightly more recent example. I think the visuals fit perfectly with the overall atmosphere of the game.
We weren't trying to run away from you, honest.
Only when I started playing the second game, I noticed a massive difference in texture resolution, which makes the second game look way sharper. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, I still think the first game looks great. And the cartoonish art style is definitely the main reason why it aged so well in terms of the overall look of the game. When it comes to the story, it's pretty light-hearted and humorous, even though you're basically playing as a bad guy.
Being Overlord is more than just throwing a few fireballs and causing chaos.
That's not entirely true though, because you can also make some good choices in the story, and the game keeps the track of all of this in the menu. It's like a little morality system that you can see in some other RPGs. That by itself makes the story a lot more interesting than it actually is. This game will use every opportunity to make you laugh with cartoonish evil humor. I love the voice acting for the minions and all of the goofy stuff that's happening related to them.
Gluttonous Overlord!
The minion called the Gnarl is your guide and the narrator for the game, and he's so freaking good. I usually find the narrators in games annoying, but this guy did an amazing job and I always look forward to his dialogue.
They will grow in power and become almost invisible to enemies. Well, apart from their permanent odor of rotting flesh and fish heads.
The jester is very annoying but hilarious, and the regular minions you're going to control are very silly as well. Even their basic animations are pretty silly and interesting to look at, which gives them a lot of personality. Your main goal is to build the tower, gather all the minion types, explore all the maps, and kill all the heroes. These heroes got corrupted, and each of them represents one of 7 deadly sins. That will be the main gist of the story, and it's okay for what the game is trying to do.
Greens are also known for their poor hygiene. Look at this place. Ah! Even evil creatures should have standards.
By itself it's like whatever, but it's a perfect fit for this style of gameplay, where you get to control minions as the evil overlords. The main strength of the game's story is obviously the humor and the way it's told, and not necessarily the story itself. To sum it up, it was entertaining in general. Now let's talk about the gameplay.
Ooh, an object. I like objects.
You control the Overlord with the left thumbstick, but the right thumbstick is used for controlling the minions. It takes a while to get used to, because you would expect that you can rotate the camera with the right thumbstick. You know, like 90% of these games with over-the-shoulder camera. The only way to have any kind of control over the camera is with the trigger buttons. They will just recenter the camera, but it's very useful considering that you can't rotate the damn thing. You can also choose to play with a more top-down view, but I didn't care that much for this camera perspective, to be honest. Even though I probably should have, because as you progress through the game, Overlord turns into a more tactical game. So having a better view of the map definitely helps, but I prefer to play it as a third-person game. It's totally playable like this, by the way, and when you get the grasp of the controls, it feels very natural. It's still a bit annoying when you constantly have to recenter the camera, but you get used to it. I thought it was weird to use the right thumbstick to control the minions, but only in the first 30 minutes of the game or so. As I started discovering more areas and things to do with the minions, it became very clear why the controls are the way they are. You will have to guide your minions through some areas where your character can't go, and the right thumbstick makes perfect sense for those actions. The controls are responsive in general, especially for controlling the minions. On the other hand, the walking animation and moving your character around is pretty stiff, but that doesn't matter a lot.
Most wise master.
The gameplay doesn't require you to be very precise with the controls, well, at least not with the Overlord himself. It's all about controlling your minions and selecting appropriate minion types for the mission that you're currently on. Your character has only a handful of actions, like the basic melee attack and a ranged fireball spell. You can use the lock-on button for easier targeting, which is also required for some specific minion abilities. At first, it seemed like you won't even need to use Overlord's abilities, but you actually do. The simple melee attack has a combo that will deal some serious damage to pretty much all enemies. You'll sometimes have situations where you lack appropriate minions, so the Overlord attacks will make a huge difference. The ranged fireball attack is no different. As a matter of fact, it's even stronger than the melee attack, and it's useful for getting rid of enemies that you can't physically reach. This is usually done by controlling your minions and guiding them on those out-of-reach enemies, but like I said, you sometimes won't be able to do that. And just in general, the fireball spell helps a lot with killing enemies, so I use it a lot. Overlord has health and mana bars, and both can be increased by finding specific items on the map. Then you need to use your minions to transfer those items back to the tower. This can be done automatically by your minions if they have a clear path.
Your mana has been increased.
It's usually a bit harder to get to those items than it is to transfer them back to the tower. Your minions will destroy a lot of objects on the map, and by doing so you can get gold, health and mana potions. It's really fun to watch your minions destroy things in this game. You'll find some other items on these maps which will enhance some of your minion abilities. Speaking of abilities, all minion types have something unique. The brown minions are strong melee fighters, fire minions have ranged fire attacks and they can clear fire out of the way, blue minions can swim and resurrect dead minions, and green ones can backstab enemies, as well as clear all the poison areas. However, all of them have a distinctive weakness as well. So you'll have to keep in mind all of their strengths and weaknesses when you progress through the game while attacking enemies and solving puzzles. The game does a really great job with making you utilize all of the minion types, but it takes a while until you get to that point. You start off with the brown minions only, and as you explore the map and discover more areas, you'll find this quest for minion hives. Once you get the hive back to the tower, in a similar manner like those items I talked about, you'll permanently unlock that minion type. This creates a pretty non-linear progression in the game, making you go back and forth between different maps. This game feels pretty open, even though you will hit those brick walls eventually, because you lack the appropriate minion type. For example, in order to unlock blue minions, you'll need to have green minions already. And in order to have green minions, you'll have to discover the forest area and do the main quest there. The forest area has activities that you can't do without the blue minions and so on.
Drowning your army is a waste. Sire, if only we had minions that could swim, or float, or not drown quite so fast.
This gives you the reason to revisit all those maps once you unlock more minion types, and sometimes that's absolutely necessary in order to progress. You start the game with only 5 brown minions, and this number will grow up to 50 in total later on. You'll need different resources in order to summon your minions. Pretty much all enemies that you kill or every item that you destroy has a chance to drop these orbs. The more orbs you have, the more minions you can summon, and some of them can only be dropped by certain enemies or in certain zones where it makes sense. I had some situations where I had to grind for these orbs a little bit, which is annoying but not horrible. It's usually your fault when your minions die, but there are definitely some exceptions, because these little motherfuckers can be dumb as hell.
Hey, are those creatures for sale?
You can select and control different minion types with the flags, which is another essential mechanic. Your minions are not the smartest creatures, so you have to babysit them sometimes or they will just die like idiots. These flags will prevent them from moving and you have greater control over your minions when you use them. As I mentioned before, the game becomes like a tactical strategy game later on, but in a good way. I thought it was really fun to figure out how to use the minions on different levels, even though there are some frustrating and a bit outdated mechanics. For example, the checkpoint system is a bit annoying and you can't save the game whenever you want. So if it happens that you have to exit the game in the middle of a quest, you'll have to restart the quest from the beginning. That's just the nature of some older games, but other than that, I think the game is really well designed. It's pretty hard to die in this game even when you don't have any minions. This will drastically change in the sequel though. Then we have the tower, which you can expand as you play the game and also use the gold to buy some decorative items. This feature is a bit undercooked, there is not much to do here. You can practice with your minions in the arena, which is nice, but I didn't care that much about this, to be honest. You can also craft some new weapons and armors a bit later in the game. To sum it up, I love this game and I couldn't wait to jump straight into the sequel. I heard some great things about the second game, so I was really curious.
Time to crash the party. Time to crush the empire. Time to bring back the black. Loose the minions of war. Because evil always finds a way.
The second Overlord game came out in 2009 for PC, Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. Right off the bat, I noticed a huge difference in graphical fidelity. The sequel looks sharper, cleaner, but it's still very colorful, as it should be. You can immediately tell that this game had a much bigger budget, or so it seems at least. The presentation took a massive leap in quality, and there's something crazy going on for the entirety of the intro. This persists throughout the whole game, as the sequel keeps introducing some very impressive set pieces with great presentation.
This reef helps bar the way to Everlight. The elves believe it's nature's blessing. I believe it's just to keep the wet sops in one place.
Unfortunately, I quickly started having some game-breaking technical issues. The game works fine for 90% of the time, and then it gets stuck on the black screen while loading a scene. This usually happens at the end of quests before the game auto-saves, which means that I constantly keep losing progress and have to restart the quest from the very beginning. This quest will take you at least 30 minutes to complete, which is a huge setback every time the game crashes. I lost hours and hours of progress constantly and I just couldn't finish the game because it started getting extremely annoying. Overlord 2 allows you to make manual saves, but the way it does it is pretty limited, so this didn't help my case at all. You will need to go back to the tower in order to make the manual save, which you can't do at the end of the major quests. I tried every possible fix for this problem that I could find online, but nothing worked. For a while, it seemed like I fixed it when I reduced the graphics to medium, which made the game look way worse, by the way, especially with the shadows. But nope, it started happening again. I still managed to invest some decent hours into the sequel, just enough so I can see all the new features and mechanics.
The master? Oh, the master, the master! We'll see!
It's a shame because I love this game, it's an amazing sequel and a better game than the first Overlord in many different ways. So let's talk about the actual game. This time around you start the game as a child Overlord.
A new Overlord, you say? This is the last hope for evil? He's a little short.
I'm going to sound like a broken record, but it's yet another similarity with Fable games. The beginning of the sequel is a bit more guided experience, but with way better presentation in general. You can even say that the beginning is a little bit overdone, but I quickly forgot about that when the game opened up. This is Overlord's kid from the first game, by the way, who was sent to live in the mountain village of Nordberg. Everyone was afraid of this kid and they called him Witch Boy, all except one girl. The Glorious Empire took control of these new lands after the cataclysm that destroyed most of the old world. Now the minion is back as an advisor and the narrator of the game.
This will allow us access to other areas of the world where you can establish your new dark domain. I feel a small poem is called for to commemorate the event.
Like I mentioned before, he's an amazing narrator and quite possibly the only narrator that I don't find annoying. You'll get tips from him all the time, which is very useful, and his commentary is on point as always.
Hell of a wobble these ladies have. Ooh, hell of a wobble.
Shortly after the beginning of the game, you're all grown up and ready to take over the world again. Naturally, one of your first missions is to take over the village of Nordberg and get revenge for how they treated you. The Glorious Empire is your main enemy, as well as the elves. Elves are basically hippies, who talk like your typical dude bro from early 2000s.
What did Mother Earth ever do to you, man? Why must you choose this path of destruction?
I found the story of the sequel a bit more engaging and interesting than the first game. Once again, the characters are intentionally over the top, which makes the cutscenes and dialogue very interesting. It's like a huge parody of evil versus good, but there are certainly some shades of grey within the story. The good are not so good after all, just like those quote-unquote heroes from the first game. And you, as the Overlord, have choices to make, similar to the first game. You can usually spare people or kill them, which will affect your alignment and the quest you're currently doing. Now let's talk about the gameplay.
Rex!
I immediately noticed that the control scheme is way more responsive. Controlling the Overlord feels way better now in general, it feels snappier and the animations are much better. I mean, these are all the things you would expect from a good sequel, but it's definitely worth mentioning. Turning around, using melee and range skills is much more enjoyable now. You're going to use your character quite a bit in the sequel, so having better controls and animations make the gameplay more enjoyable. The customization and the progression system is done much better in the sequel. Unlike in the first game, you won't have to wait for a long time until you get some new armors and weapons. You'll need to find some specific items when you progress through the game, which will unlock the possibility to craft items for the Overlord. This gives the currency that you collect a much greater meaning in general. I didn't care that much about the gold in the first game, up to a certain point, because it was mostly used for the decorative items in the tower. It was also used for getting new armor pieces and weapons, but I think the sequel does a much better job with this. As soon as you get to the tower, you'll have the chance to get new items if you have the resources. The gold is not the only currency though, you'll need to find some special items as well in order to unlock new items to craft. It didn't take long for me to collect enough gold to buy a new weapon and some armor pieces, which have some special stats. These items look very good, by the way. Those are definitely some nice new features, which substantially improve the gameplay in the sequel.
Sorry for the fuss, sire. Folks around here are a little allergic to death.
But of course, the minions are still the main focus of the gameplay, and they also got some brand new features. First of all, the old features from the first game are back, the main gist of the gameplay remains the same. However, even the most basic minion features feel much better. Controlling them is faster, and they have some new beefy sound effects, which make this even better. I also like how they try to improve the camera in the sequel by actually giving you the option to rotate the camera left and right. If you only use the left and right button inputs on the thumbstick, you will rotate the camera. But if you want to control the minions, this has to be triggered by pushing the thumbstick up, and then you can move them in all directions. Sounds great, in theory at least. I thought this was pretty cool in the beginning, but it's not, because it can make controlling the minions and the Overlord a true nightmare. That's because the controls can just refuse to work sometimes or not work as intended. The camera will sometimes just religiously stick on something and nothing you press even matters. It's worse when the game simply refuses to take some inputs, like moving the minions left and right. So even though this seems like a great gameplay addition, it's actually not, it's totally the opposite. You'll get used to it though, but that doesn't make those moments when it doesn't work any less annoying. Putting that aside, Overlord 2 introduces some very cool features. Now you can take the control of a single minion on some levels in order to do something specific. Some of the levels I got to play are completely designed around this new feature. More importantly, the design of such levels is very good, amazing even. For example, when you unlock the green minions, you have to play a pretty long level, which is almost entirely based on stealth mechanics. The green minions are backstabbers in the sequel as well, and they can be stealthy. I thought these levels are going to be frustrating, but they're not. Far from it actually. They have just enough challenge to be interesting, but not annoying or very punishing. As for the minion types, it's very similar to the original game, but like I said, the fundamental mechanics are much improved. You still need to unlock new minion types by solving quests in different areas. For example, now you can mount wolves with your brown minions, which is mandatory against some enemy types. The sequel also introduces some objects that you have to use, like big weapons or even a boat. Yeah, the boat is very interesting, and there are even some missions which are exclusively done while sailing. You have to use your red minions as archers basically, and try not to sink your boat. Speaking of which, dying in the sequel is much more common now.
Stay back! Every life you want your own way. Master.
I really didn't feel like the first game is challenging enough. It was pretty easy and forgiving actually. The sequel is not extremely hard or anything, but it's certainly much more challenging than the first game. You can die very fast if you're not careful. Instead of starting with only 5 minions, now you start with 20. Like I said, you still need to unlock different minion types, but even the early game feels pretty good. The battles are much bigger and more spectacular because of all the new set pieces. The Glorious Army has a lot of NPCs on the screen at once, which rivals the amount of minions you have. I love how the soldiers react to being hit. It makes the combat feel more impactful, even though it looks very goofy. Which is the whole point of the game, to be honest. You either love it or hate it.
Hell of a wobble!
I absolutely love the vibes of this game and how the minions behave or misbehave. They can still be dumb as a bag of rocks, which can get you killed in some situations. For example, sometimes only one minion won't listen to your commands for whatever reason, and this can even get you killed. I swear to God, I think developers did this on purpose. It's hilarious and a bit annoying, but in a good way. You need to do specific things in fights in order to be successful, and Nar is very useful when you get stuck because he tells you what you need to do. Once again, the biggest problem is the stupid checkpoint system, which makes you lose a lot of progress upon deaths. It's not a huge issue, but combined with the technical problems I had, it made the game way less enjoyable, unfortunately. Then we have the brand new tower, which had some massive upgrades as well.
Hello, witch boy. Come and see what I've done with the place.
I actually cared about the tower this time around. You have multiple floors, all with different gameplay features. One great new addition to minions gameplay is the ability to resurrect minions that died. Your minions will actually level up and get new gear and titles. I assume this makes them stronger as well, and resurrecting them makes sense, but you'll need to sacrifice a lot of basic level 1 minions. The tower itself and the throne are much more visually pleasing this time around. You'll get to make some decisions every now and then by accepting certain quests. This reminds me of Dragon Age Inquisition a little bit, but it should be the other way around, obviously, because Overlord 2 came out 6 years before that game.
If you'd like to explain your intentions, speak.
Once again, the voice acting is amazing, and the game wouldn't be as great as it is if it was any different.
Yes, Everlight has some wonderfully stimulating examples of natural splendor.
Don't distract him now.
The music was pretty good in the first game, but it's even better in the sequel, in my opinion. It's very memorable, and it creates a great atmosphere while playing the game. Overall, the sequel is a much better game and an amazing game in general. It sucks that I wasn't able to enjoy it properly and I couldn't finish the game, at least not for now. I will probably start playing one of the console ports in my free time, just so I can beat the whole game without any technical problems. Overlord 2 is not the only Overlord game which came out in 2009. Actually, we got 3 different Overlord games during this year. The second game, Dark Legend and Minions. Dark Legend came out on 23rd of June in 2009, which is the exact same date when Overlord 2 came out. All of these games are published by Codemasters, but they were not developed by the same studio. Triumph Studios was the original developer for the mainline series, which would include the first game and the second game. These other games are developed by different studios, while Triumph Studios went back to their long-running RTS series called Age of Wonders. So it's not a surprise that some of the core features of Overlord games have resemblance to real-time strategy features. As a matter of fact, this studio is only known for developing this RTS series, which had 6 games in total, so far at least. Overlord 1 and 2 are the only games they developed besides the Age of Wonders series. Anyway, I had no idea what to expect from Dark Legend, but I can tell you my biggest problem with the game right now. It was a Wii exclusive, which really sucks. Not because I think the console sucks or anything, I just think this game could have done a lot better if we could get it on more platforms.
Don't worry, lad. I've not forgotten about you.
But having it on multiple platforms upon release wouldn't make a lot of sense because, like I said, it released on the same day as the sequel. It works great through emulation, even though the controls take a while to get used to. To be fair, this probably works a lot better with original hardware, but it's totally playable over emulation as well, with mouse and keyboards. The controller? Not so much, or I just wasn't able to set it properly, but it just refused to work in the game. The Wii Remote and the Nunchuck are the main controllers which this game is built for, but like I said, the emulation works pretty well. I would describe this game as Overlord 0.5, that's how it feels to me, but not in a bad way, not at all actually. It's a pretty solid game that's worth playing only if you end up liking the first 2 games. Even then, you shouldn't expect anything special from this spin-off.
Damn pumpkins lying around all day being orange.
For some reason I expected a much worse game, but I ended up getting a solid Overlord experience, which reminded me of the first game a lot. That also means that some of the new features from the second game are not present in this spin-off. Although to be fair, there is a brand new feature that we never saw in previous games, but it's not very exciting. You can choke your minions and use them as bombs to blow something up, which was pretty challenging to do for the first time on mouse and keyboards. That's the thing though, it seems like one of the main appeals for this game is how it plays on this console. Even the most basic features from previous games, like summoning minions or even moving around, seems a bit more fun on this console because of the way you use the controllers. But of course, I didn't get to experience that because I played the game through emulation. Even so, I think this game is a solid entry in the series, especially for a spin-off. Yeah, you still get to control all the minion types from previous games, solve puzzles and do some action combat and explore the map, which is a bit more linear this time around. Dark Legend is actually a prequel and a pretty short game in general. Our boy Gnarl is back to narrate the game and be your guide, and as always you play as a new Overlord called Lord Gromgard. He gets to become a new Overlord on his 16th birthday when he receives the Minion Commanding Gauntlet. Your father left on a quest to reclaim his fortune, and he left you and your siblings back in the tower.
I'm not babysitting while you swan off to see your spineless, pointy-eared friends. My own business in the Golden Hills. The runt can look after himself.
The siblings are very annoying, so one of your first quests is to wreck their rooms, and this is where the game teaches you the basic controls. This game starts off pretty fun, and it's cool to see how everything is happening much faster compared to previous games. Like I said, it's a much shorter game in general, so it makes sense. It's like a more focused experience with most major features from previous games. Other than that, I don't have a lot to say about this particular game. I enjoyed it way more than expected, and I would definitely recommend it to Overlord fans, even if you have to get out of your way to set up the emulation. It's a no-brainer if you have the original hardware, and it's one of the first games I would ever play if I decide to get the Wii console. It's a shame that this game is not even on the Switch or Switch 2, but there is still hope, maybe.
Your armor certainly suits you, Master. Disguises all that nasty human skin of yours.
The last Overlord game that came out in 2009 was called Minions. This is the third game that came out on June 23rd. Minions is a Nintendo DS exclusive, and to be honest, this game is almost not even worth mentioning. It's not horrible, but it has little to no resemblance to Overlord games. Except the fact that you're playing with the minions this time around, as the name of the game suggests. The gameplay is focused entirely around using the stylist, but once again, I play with mouse and keyboard through emulation. The game works great, and you can play it like this if you want, but I would not suggest playing this game at all. It's slow, it has nothing to do with Overlord's gameplay, and it's just not fun. You get to play as 4 different minions, and they all have the same abilities that we already talked about multiple times. Yeah, there are only 4 minions in total, and you get to do some fighting and solving puzzles with their unique abilities. I gave up after only 30 minutes of gameplay, and I had the feeling that I played a lot more. It's just not fun. After 2009, we had a very big gap in time before we got another Overlord game. 6 years, to be more precise. But at least it was worth the wait, right? No.
It was all so very dull.
Fellowship of Evil came out in 2015 for PC, Xbox One and PlayStation 4. This game was developed and published by Codemasters. Codemasters was the publisher for all previous games, but they only developed the last entry in the series. And I wish they didn't, to be honest.
It was rather unfortunate.
Fellowship of Evil is a hack-and-slash, top-down action RPG, and a horrible one at that. Even if this game was a great ARPG, it would still not feel right if you expect to have a similar experience to previous Overlord games. Hacking and slashing is just not what Overlord games are all about. Even so, I was ready to give this game a fair chance, but I quickly got disappointed. The visuals are fine, but they certainly lack the unique aspect of old Overlord games. This wouldn't bother me that much if the game itself was any good. The Fellowship of Evil focuses on the action gameplay, puzzles, and some minion activities. The action gameplay is below average, with only some resemblance of minions gameplay from previous games. You can control a couple of minions at once and give them a specific command in order to solve puzzles usually. This game starts off in a very boring way, with some time trials levels, it's just awful. Before that, you can select one of 4 different characters. These characters have a couple of unique abilities in combat, and that's about it. I play with the guy who looks like an Overlord in previous games. You get a simple melee attack, a strong melee attack which stops time, and a very strong attack that will deal some massive damage. None of this feels fun to use, because the game lacks any sense of impact in combat and interesting enemies to fight. One of the main features of this game was the co-op system, but I don't see how that would make the game any better. I mean, every game is a little bit more fun in co-op with friends, but nobody could convince me to play this game again with them in co-op. The itemization system is weird and it doesn't feel rewarding at all. You're constantly collecting quote-unquote loot, and it seems like they tried to create a slot machine rather than a proper RPG loot system.
Fill your boots. If you don't have boots, use them.
Levels are procedurally generated in this game. I actually didn't know this while I was playing the game. I got this info from the wiki page. Doesn't make any difference whatsoever. I don't care if they're procedurally generated, as long as they are fun to play, but they're not. You have to avoid traps, kill all enemies and solve some puzzles in order to progress. The time trial segments are beyond annoying, but that's only one of the issues with the level design. It's not broken or anything, it's just not fun. Like I said before, if the action gameplay is any better in this one, I will probably be able to enjoy it. But it's not, it's below average action gameplay with a disappointing loot system and boring level design.
It was all so very dull.
I'm not surprised by the poor reception of this game in 2015, it has some terrible reviews. I think this is one of those examples when publishers don't have the idea what to do with the IP, but they want to make some money. Dark Legend was also a spin-off, but they kept the spirit of Overlord games. We can't say the same about Fellowship of Evil, it's not even close.
It was rather unfortunate.
And those will be all Overlord games.
Hell of a wobble these ladies have. Ooh, hell of a wobble.
They started really strong with the first two games, but after that it was all downhill. Dark Legend was a solid spin-off, but Minions and Fellowship of Evil are just not good Overlord games. It's been 10 years since the last game in the series, and every fan is still hoping to see a third proper entry in the series.
I'll leave it at that for now.
It's still possible, I guess, but we don't have any info about it. Even though the second game gave me a lot of technical issues, I still think that's the best game in the series. And I can't wait until I come back to the first two games and play them again in the near future. Playing the first two games was an amazing experience in 2025, and they reminded me why some old games were so great. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with me until the very end of the video. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more content like this. And if you want to go a step further, consider supporting your boy by becoming a YouTube channel member or a Patreon. Huge thanks to all my current supporters, and I'll see ya in the next one.